Hi, my name is Phillips. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of EPM Coach, coming to you with another question for EP Monthly. So for this particular one, spoiler alert, as usual, take a look at the question if you haven't already. But the question has to do with ethylene glycol toxicity. And memorize. Please take the time, memorize the table that we have on toxic alcohols for you. This is very classic test fodder, and in particular, some points that I'm going to go into that were not really directly related to this question, but I think are really important to highlight. So, first of all, fomepizole is only indicated for two of the alcohols. It is not indicated for isopropyl alcohol or ethanol because those are going to metabolize on their own into perfectly fine compounds or just be excreted and you're fine. The reason to use fomepizole is because the particular alcohol is going to have metabolites that become toxic. And in this case, we're talking about methanol and ethylene glycol. So fomepizole would be indicated in this particular case, the question you just did, because it's an ethylene glycol poisoning. The other thing that I want to point out that is not in this question, but is just, the number of times it comes up on the ITE and qualifying exam and your concert, and so most likely as well in your MyEM cert also as those start to roll out and we see what's in there, is the issue of isopropyl alcohol and how it presents. So you'll notice in this table that all of these have an osmolar gap, all of them. Methanol, isopropyl alcohol, ethylene glycol, and ethanol. All of them will create an elevated osmolar gap. That's just by virtue of the fact they're alcohols. But what isopropyl alcohol causes is an elevated osmolar gap without causing an anion gap. And this is key, and I'm going to say it again. Isopropyl alcohol is the only one of the four alcohols that will cause an elevated osmolar gap, but a non-anion gap. So it does not have an anion gap, and that is only isopropyl alcohol. So you can think of it as isopropyl alcohol. Iso, like isolated, it's the only one, and that is the only one that will not cause an anion gap along with the elevated osmolar gap. So when that comes up as a question, and it really honestly is not a question of if but when, depending on if you're taking all these ITEs or when you eventually take your MyEM cert or your concert or such, this question is just, it's not terribly clinically relevant, but it is so demonstrably true that it's clearly a correct or incorrect answer. It's just fantastic test fodder. So isopropyl alcohol is the only one of the alcohols that will cause an elevated osmolar gap, but not an anion gap. So remember that. Also, fomepizole, right, for methanol and for ethylene glycol, not for isopropyl alcohol and ethanol. This is Andrew Phillips, the founder and editor-in-chief of EPM Coach, wishing you a good month.